Prepare to qualify.
You have entered the Fandom Effect, a podcast filled with anime, video games, comics, MMA, and unlimited ideas. Each week, a new guest will press enter and discuss how they're making their dreams come true. With your host, Mark the Bushido Geek Halberg. It's time to enter the Fandom Effect. Now, please insert 25 cents to continue.
Humanoid.
You have one playthrough. Better make it count.
Hi, I'm your Captain Mark.
I'm your Navigator Chris.
And I'm Dak.
Together, we are the crew of Piece Together, and you are listening to the Fandom Effect.
We are here, everyone, with the newest episode of the Fandom Effect. It's going to be a pretty special one. We're going to be doing a two-part podcast for you guys here with the crew of the Piece Together podcast. How's it going, everybody?
Hey, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's super cool to be here.
You guys are going to be unique in a few ways. You're the first multi-part episodes that we've done, and then you're also the first podcast with multiple guests. So you guys are kind of breaking all the rules here.
We got you outnumbered at this point.
Yeah, I disagree with you guys on something about about One Piece here. I'm just going to be like, well, oh, look at that. I lost the last audio for the last 5 minutes, I guess.
Oh, no, the tragedy.
It's not like we ever disagree with each other or anything.
Well, not that they know of. I'm the one who does the editing.
Yeah, so you know the pain of, like, oh, no, I'm not going to let them get that over on me. I'll just quickly...
Oh, boy, howdy do I ever.
Oh, yeah, editing is... well, we can get into it, but editing itself is...
So does that mean all my bits about Foxy being the best character have not made it onto the final episodes?
Hey, you're going to have to edit that out.
Like, just bleep over it as soon as you start saying that. Like, it'll just sound like he's been swearing for, like, 15 seconds.
Perfect.
But we got a fun episode here for you guys. It's going to be pretty fun. Of course, as always, make sure you guys stay till the end of both parts so you guys can hear the fandom tip of each part. We got some pretty cool ones kind of aligned with what we're talking about. Just to kind of give you guys a quick little synopsis, the Piece Together podcast is solely focused to the One Piece anime, which is definitely one of my all-time favorites. You guys have heard me talk about it numerous times at this point and post numerous things about it. So we're going to have a lot of fun going into a lot of the, more details about it. And the One Piece Together podcast is primarily, you guys have two resources you can use. It's Libsyn, so it's piecetogether.libsyn.com. And then you guys also have a Twitter at Piece Together cast. And of course, as always, guys, both links will be posted when the podcast is getting ready to premiere. And of course, when it premieres as well. I'm sure you guys have watched more than just One Piece. So why One Piece? What makes One Piece the anime to start a podcast on?
Oh boy, I guess that's a me question.
It is a you question.
It was your idea.
Captain.
Yeah, that's fair.
And you're the one with the ink, so...
That is true. I do... I have a big old tattoo on my right arm of a whole bunch of different things that are special to me. And among them is definitely the Straw Hat Jolly Roger. So this was very much my brainchild. And it's not so much because I thought One Piece is just the best the best show to start a podcast about. There's so much material. It is. And there is, just to be clear. But those thoughts nowhere near my mind. I personally have loved for a very, very long time. Listeners to Piece Together would know I was sort of introduced to it offhandedly by a very good friend, the best man at my wedding, of all things, a long time ago. And I fell in love with it and stayed in love with it for a very long time, but just didn't have anyone to share it with. So eventually I shared it with my amazing, beautiful wife. And then Dak, who I've known since high school. Oh, God, don't let that one sink in.
when the number of years start to count in your head, you're like, oh, dude, oh, God, no.
Yeah.
We've logged many more years in our lives being alive, knowing each other than not knowing each other.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. Oh, wow. Okay, we're old. Anywho.
Well, the darkness is setting in, so we should probably...
Yeah, I'll wrap up this story before we get to the twilight years of my life. Dak had come to visit us, as he does in the before times, a couple of times a year, usually. And on a whim, he was like, hey, this is something I've thought about. I see you guys own some of it. Do you want to watch it? We did. We fell out of it for a bit. Dak was kind enough to come back to us and be like, hey, I didn't want to be pushy, but this is still a thing I'd like to watch if you're interested. I'm like, heck yes, I'm interested. Let's do this. Now, the question of how it went from that to podcast.
I think I can answer that actually, because I don't believe it started at your place. I believe what happened was I had talked a little bit about going back a few visits. I had mentioned like, some anime. There's some anime I like. I'd like to really get into it though. And Chris immediately put on Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. We marathoned a good chunk of that during the week I was visiting, and it's not One Piece in terms of length, but it's also not a limited engagement series.
It still requires some actual paying attention.
Yeah.
And
we
we
watched
time to be Chris.
Soul Eater as well. What ended up happening, I believe, was that you would put your DVD in the computer and stream it. That was how we had to go about doing it. On something that was kind of like Twitch, but before Twitch, so not quite Twitch at that
It was
time,
livestream.com. Which
was
is now
livestream.
defunct.
The phrase live stream is not, which I find hilarious. Everyone's like, oh no, Kleenex might lose their trademark, Google might lose their trademark, and live stream is like, it can be so much worse. But these two big faves of Chris's, and we just had such a great time together, and Chris was just loving sharing these things so close to her heart with me, and me being into them and everything. And then Mark was like, so the thing that's most close to my heart has a triple digits episode count, and I'd like to dive into it. So I think we tried doing it on live stream, and a lot to just, maybe it's just me having a hard time keeping the ball rolling and instigating plans and the like, but we just fell off. It never quite took. I remember that we got up to about the Baratier on the back of that alone, but when it just didn't happen, then I visited and do you want to see how much we can just plow through? And we got through the Baratier, but I don't think we even got to the beginning of our long part.
I don't think we did, no.
No, but the what is actually...
Oh, no, sorry. I think it just kind of, after that visit, you kind of say, okay, got an idea. You know how we keep meaning to watch One Piece a long distance, but we keep falling off of it? Got an idea how we can keep ourselves honest about that. Know how we can stick to 4 episodes a week? We do a podcast. And for some reason, I went, instead of what?
All right.
Yeah.
To this day, when I think back on it, this was 2 years ago now, over 2 years ago. I must just be very blessed to have wonderful friends and people I surround myself with, because I think I can count the number of people on one hand who would hear that idea and think, not immediately, no way in hell, let alone say, let's do it.
Way long ago, I had, way in the twilight years, had attempted starting a, YouTube channel with friends, and some of the videos are funny and some are cool, and then some are just same thing. I'm glad I have good friends, because now looking back, I'm like, why would I agree to record that?
You feel a little better, ease the burden a little bit. I'm going to share something that I don't think Chris and Dak have heard up until this point. It's not a picture that I myself have. So let me preface it with that. I can't show you this after I say these words, Chris.
How dare you?
But the convention at which I was introduced to One Piece was a convention in Tampa called MetroCon. And I don't remember if this must have been the second year that we went. I went in a pretty bad Aburame Shino from Naruto cosplay. This was pre-Shippuden, before Shippuden was even a thing. There exists a picture of me being in that cosplay, forcibly duct taped to a chair on the internet somewhere.
I'm sorry, who has it?
I don't know. I didn't know it was up there until the next year, right? I'm in class in high school, and the girl sitting behind me, I believe it was my good friend at the time, Adrian. She's like, hey, I need to show you something. Is this you? I'm like, excuse
How
me?
dare you share this with me? We've been married 7 years. This is the first time I've heard Mark.
So, welcome to the Fandom Effect, where we end marriages one episode at a time.
It's fine, honey. Have some margarita.
I know.
People are also
I'm
going
still
to
drink
think that
some.
there's I have a complex with my own name because this is the second additional Mark that has been on. And we're not that far in, so people are going to start thinking like, I'm pretty sure he's obsessed.
Could it just be that people named Mark are awesome? I submit to the court.
That's a matter of fact. That's a well-written rule. No, you guys have brought up some pretty interesting points, like when it comes to being introduced to animes in general, but especially an anime as long as this. So my funny little tidbit is the people who had turned me on to One Piece originally way long ago are no longer watching it. I'm the only one who stuck through and like continued to keep watching it. I have a lot of friends that, and this was one question I want to make sure I asked you guys. I have a lot of friends who the concept really appeals to them. They think it'd be very interesting. They've seen clips and they think they would love it. But they ask me how many episodes, and as soon as they hear the words, I think it's at like 880 right now. No,
it's like 910, I think.
Yeah,
now,
we're in the
920.
900s.
Yeah,
I think Oda had said maybe. I think he said he sees the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So I think he said probably like another 3 or 4 years, but that's 3 to 4 years in Japan. So you can double that for the time that it ends in in English. So you got to figure easily over 1,000. Like that's a guarantee.
Easily.
Hands down.
So how do you tell other people, especially like for you yourselves, like how do you keep yourselves engaged, and how do you like try to convince other people that like this is worth sticking through for 1,000 plus?
I mean, I've been thinking about this a bit all week, honestly. Or I shouldn't say all week. I guess the last week would be more accurate. And I think people just need to rethink how they think about it, right? Sure, it's a really long show. But I would almost say don't go into it thinking about how long it is. Go into it thinking, I'm going to watch this until I stop enjoying it. And I can almost guarantee you that will get you through the 1,000 episodes. The low points are so much of a blip on the radar. There's a couple things in there that are definitely, to put it mildly, pretty cringeworthy by today's standards that maybe weren't such a thing at the standards of the time. And if you can get past those super tiny blips, I can't imagine a world where you say to someone, hey, you know what? Don't worry about watching the whole thing. Just watch until you're not interested anymore. If they can get to Arlong Park, they're done. They're hooked for life. I will stand by that statement forever.
Oh, no, that's true. Because that's what hooked me. Because Dak and I actually just talked about this on our most recent episode. Mark would often play One Piece episodes in the background while we were doing stuff in the house. And I didn't pay attention because I didn't care. I didn't have the interest then. And what hooked me was Nami just sitting on the ground, screaming her lungs out, stabbing her arm, and I'm sitting there like, I thought this was a show about pirates for kids. And and then I had to watch. I had to go back and see what led to that point, and that's when the hook started to sink in. Like, it's insane.
Dak, you have an interesting, because you're kind of like watching it from kind of beginning, whereas your other two co-hosts are a little bit farther ahead. For you, what was your hook like to really drag? Is it Arlong Park as well, or do you have something else that kind of dragged you into it too?
I trust Mark's taste generally. Well, not like across, like not like everything he likes. I like guaranteed.
Well, after the story about being duct taped to a chair in cosplay, I would hope that you exercise some
Mark does not like recommend things just because he likes them. I know that he will not recommend a thing to me unless he thinks that I will like it. And I've had ADHD since I was like in 2nd grade or so. So I have long been acquainted with the knowledge that to just get something done, you just start at the beginning and do it in manageable chunks. So overwhelming as it was, I was like, well, let's sit down and see how this thing starts, because it's a big part of the culture. It is something that when I have told people what my podcast is about, it is not just weebs that like, oh yeah, One Piece. I know that. Like it has some place in pop culture that's kind of in between weeb and normie. It's not bebop like level integrated or anything, but it's something. But I don't even like, I don't remember any point of just being like struggling with interest and then being like enraptured, but I do really feel like it went from point like, okay, I'm in my 30s watching a shonen anime. I got to take this with a grain of salt. And somewhere around Along Park and going into Alabasta, it just being through that lens, it's just like every other great TV show that I sit down to watch. Like, it doesn't matter. Oda just has a way with a story. He knows how to hook you. He knows how to make every twist and turn satisfying. He knows what he is doing when he's writing.
Oh yeah, no, I would wholeheartedly agree. It took me. I was into it from the start. I've always been a huge like pirate samurai guy. Usually anything along those two lines, I'll pretty much be into it for the long haul. But I mean, I will say like Arlong Park for me was definitely like the key thing. Like I think I've rewatched the clip of that Nami scene you described. Like if I ever get bored sometimes, like I'll just go back to that clip and rewatch it because it's just such a powerful moment in that anime of just like that's like bam right in your face. I mean, that is just, I feel like that scene now is like so iconic in kind of like One Piece. I will say for people out there that are listening and maybe this is what convinces them to give One Piece a try, you do have to, like Dak just said, go into the early aspects with a little bit of a grain of salt. As the early parts of the crew are picking up, I feel like there maybe is a few slow episodes. But Mark, you brought up a really good point earlier. I want to jump to really quick, where you were talking about One Piece in itself. Like if you can get hooked at what about Arlong Park, regardless of what happens down the road, most of the episodes follow like enough of a well theme where it gets you invested. And I feel like that's a really good point because a big complaint you hear a lot of times about even other large animes, Naruto, for example. This is what turned me off Naruto was the filler arcs were so bad. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to animes. I want to watch the OVAs, I want to watch the movies, I want to watch the other elements to it. And I feel like for Naruto, the filler arcs for me were so bad, I just couldn't get through it, and it just turned me off. And I feel like where One Piece has such a strength is that when it does filler arcs, it ties them up to either different parts of the anime or other aspects of One Piece. And I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on kind of that aspect of One Piece, because obviously filler arcs are a large part of every anime.
It's a mixed blessing, I would say, because we're only watching all of it because we said that we would, and we said it on a podcast, so it's like bound by law to follow through with that if we want to stay legally solvent and everything. Yeah. So it definitely does keep interest and everything, but knowing that a lot of people will not want to suffer through filler, and we tried to do Millennial Dragons all in one day, and it damn near killed us.
I'm slumped over on the couch begging for it to end.
We thought it'd be a fun drunken romp, and we just ended it broken people.
But we learned from that.
We learned we can never do 7 episodes of filler straight in a row ever again, is what we learned.
It's a good lesson.
Oftentimes want to just skip it, even though I do respect with One Piece, there's not like, I was shocked to find out how much like, did Bleach do it as well? Like I forget, like some anime have gone into like the realm of like 20, 30 plus.
Oh yeah, Bleach did arcs.
Yeah. I quit watching Bleach after the Aizen arc for reasons I've ranted about. Not in this podcast so far, but for reasons I've ranted about to all the friends that are now sick of hearing why I stopped watching Bleach. But I think Bleach's fillers were pretty bad. I remember when they would do like a quick filler arc, it would be like something unrelated to everything else going on completely. It would go to like his sister and the the teddy bear that had the thing inside it that could like make it talk and move and stuff. Like it would go right from, like, it'd be like middle of a battle, and then you knew a filler arc was coming up, and then it would jump to like his sister for 4 episodes, fighting like some random thing and like in the human world, and it just was like, oh my god.
I think I stopped watching almost immediately after the Whole Soul Society arc because it hopped right into the Bound arc with the weird vampires, and I was like, what is this? I think I'm done now. And then I would check in on it every now and then just, like you said, like the filler arcs were just so unrelated to anything and tended to be like right in the middle of stuff, and it was just so intensely frustrating. I couldn't do it anymore.
Filler will do you in. Just talking about it, just the flashbacks. But no, I filler's a hard sell for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people will just outright skip it. And there's always, the warnings that need to be laid up. Like, they actually get onto the grand line on the back half of a filler episode where Nami does a non-canonical murder, etc., etc. And it's a little dicey, but it's just the back half of one episode. You can pretty easily get instructions on what One Piece filler is safe to skip. Then there's G8s, which we all feel fondly about.
Please watch G8.
Yeah.
Like, when Mark and I first went through the series, we skipped the filler because I hate filler, and I didn't care. And I said, I just want to see the story and the parts that are important. So we skipped G8 like fools. And I think we'd always meant to go back and watch it, but we never got around to it. Wonderful thing about going through and watching all of the filler as we go through all these episodes is getting to watch G8 and appreciating it for what it is. It's such a good little filler arc.
You had mentioned it before, like all filler in itself, even though One Piece tends to have stronger filler, if you try to watch an entire filler arc in one go, regardless of how good it is, it's filler arc, eventually it will start to gnaw at your brain and you'll go insane.
Yeah, One Piece's writers, definitely the ones who write the filler episodes, do seem to have a pretty strong beat on what they need to do. Like, we can't progress these things. We can't build upon that in a way that would do world building. But we could have Sanji sweep in here, do like a cooking competition. That would work. And just all these things that they seem to know what passes muster. If not, knocks it out of the park.
Yeah. And to make it interesting enough where it's not going to turn someone off or long enough to where people are just not going to bother with it, because the same amount of time still goes into a filler. So you want people to still be engaged enough to spend time to watch it, knowing that it's not part of the main storyline.
Yeah, coming into like anime late, like finding out how egregious filler was in some shows, there was definitely the thought that crossed my mind: if it's so bad, is it not just better to go on hiatus? Like, just let the manga catch up if you're promoting it. But
That's what's good about what My Hero Academia is doing, though, is they're waiting with the manga. So you get your manga arc, and then they animate it, and then they wait, and they animate it. So you don't get a lot of filler, and it's just all good content.
And I'm still not caught up.
Either am I. I have not watched the current season, mainly because I like to binge, and I binged the first 3 seasons so quickly that when the newest season was coming out, I was like, I'd rather just wait until it's all out, and I can just binge watch the whole thing.
That is absolutely valid.
Mm-hmm.
But I will agree that My Hero Academia does it in a pretty smart way.
Oh, for sure. I think that being one of the most recent shonens has shown that they're starting to learn from the mistakes of all of these other shows. And I'll even throw One Piece into that basket, because One Piece has filler that's not great. Aside from Millennial Dragons, I think at worst it's just sort of uninspired and uninteresting. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I think One Piece's greatest strength is just that, all things considered, there's not that much filler. As we were talking about it, I remembered something a couple of friends of mine at work had told me about. There's a website that actually calculates the filler percentage of shows based on, number of filler episodes to total number of episodes.
You remember
It's
the name of
called
it?
animefillerlist.com. And One Piece's overall filler percentage is 11% currently, which, in the grand scheme of things, is a decent chunk. But compare that to, we'll throw Bleach on the fire, since we were just talking about it. Compare that to Bleach
That hurt my brain from having watched it.
Uh-huh.
My God, Boruto's at 20%. That just started.
Yeah. OG Naruto 41%, Naruto Shippuden 40%. So like, yeah, there's a decent chunk of filler, and I wouldn't begrudge anybody for skipping it. But One Piece's greatest strength is just that, all things considered, there's not that much of it.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I think it does a job of connecting enough. So I will avoid spoilers because I know we had talked about it before we were recording. But Dak, you haven't watched the movies just yet.
Correct.
You're getting to them. So avoiding spoilers between filler and movies. This isn't a spoiler for you, Dak, but you remember earlier on when all of a sudden Luffy can do like Gear 2? There's not really a huge explanation in the anime. He just kind of can do it.
Yeah.
It's funny because they bring it up. There's the second One Piece movie, and I'm blanking on the name. I think it's Clock something.
The Clockwork
that
Tower, Clockwork Island, something like that.
Yeah. That movie is solely to explain how Luffy gets that power.
Hold up. I've seen that movie probably the second most of all of the One Piece movies. I know we can't go into detail right now, so we're gonna have to put a pin in this. But yeah, we're coming back to this.
Yeah, there's a scene where I like that something happens, and that's the tie-in. But yeah, definitely put a pin.
Come back in for part 2 to hear how this continues. I can't.
But base point being between multiple things, you guys have kind of brought it up between Naruto and different animes is a lot of times animes look at their filler arcs in their movies as totally separate entities from the actual anime. There's no real connecting lines. If something happens in a movie or during a filler arc, it's maybe not mentioned, but I feel like in One Piece does do it for some things, but I feel they at least make attempts at referencing things that happen in movies or in a filler arc, at least to an extent. They try to do some things like to further different storylines.
At the very least, they try to remember that G8 was good, and they try to reference that, and I think that's enough, honestly. Like we just recently saw the shot of a bunch of people arriving at Marineford, and I believe Jonathan from G8 was part of that shot, and it's like, okay.
It's like our boy!
That is a good one. And we had mentioned the earlier on where you guys had left. You're at the part right now for Dak where you had left Impel Down. You're going into, obviously, the next mark is Marineford, which, so I won't overhype it, but you guys are like, those are probably two really, really, really good arcs. So I want to start off kind of on a couple different points. So it's farther enough along where you guys have a good part of the One Piece crew. So I want to kind of really quickly for part 1 here, get everyone's thoughts on like favorite character in like the One Piece crew right now, and then like a favorite non-One Piece crew member.
Don't make me choose between my children. I don't know if I can do it.
You gotta do it.
I don't know if I can do it.
I ask the hard questions to break the brain.
Chris, you want to go first?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm easy. So my favorite Straw Hat is and will always be Robin. I love her. She's just, I love her character arc. I love just everything about her. Robin is great. My favorite non-Straw Hat is Trafalgar Law. Love that boy. And just for funsies, favorite villain is my boy Crocodile.
Ooh, that's a good choice.
Your trash son.
My trash son. He's garbage and I love him.
He's an underrated villain, I feel.
What was that? You cut out for a second.
If we still got Mark trying to not break his brain, Dak, what do you got?
Some days I'm Robin and some days I'm Usopp. With Usopp, I can almost sort of feel like I know that like a lot of the more juvenile, and not to say that like you are clearly an infant if you don't appreciate Usopp, but he definitely registers as someone that I can kind of hear when I was on message boards when I was 14, like characters that I didn't get, that I didn't appreciate because I was young and I wanted to see like characters like Zoro just carve up baddies and do badass attacks with badass names, that whole sort of drill. And now it's like, oh, I kind of get this because it's real difficult to pull off a character who's just sort of like mortal amongst these, someone who some people have superpowers and some people don't have superpowers in the language of the show, but they can do ranged attacks with a sword. So that's definitely seems like it's a tier. But like Usopp is just a normal human person, and to top it off, he's a bit of a coward. And to make that work in a story is such a rewarding thing to see pay off over the long term.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think with characters like that, there's a fine line where if you delve too much into the coward aspect without introducing something else, the character runs at risk of becoming too much of a joke to redeem. And I feel like, to your point, like with Usopp, like even though he is a coward, there's enough elements that get introduced to him that that character depth.
Yeah, and of course, then you have some developments like Sniper King, which is like that's the multi-rail drifting. That's solving that problem by leaning into the humor real hard.
It's so delightful, though. Sniper King just brings a smile to my face every time we see him.
It is pretty good.
Yeah. And non-Straw Hat, I feel like maybe I should be giving the villains another fair shake, but my brain's just going straight to Water 7 right now. And I can do both. I can do both because Kaku's great.
You're right. Kaku is great.
Yeah, it's true.
He's got kind of this like classy, like real basic guy, but then just like such a dork in some instances, like trying real hard that he does not find his devil fruit powers embarrassing at all. In fact, he's really into giraffes. He's always been really into giraffes. What are you talking about? Giraffes are the best. I relate.
He has good taste in animals.
Yeah, I mean, there's worse devil fruits to get.
Yes,
there's worse ones.
Yep.
Can I quick sidebar, just real quick? When Chris and I first started dating, we went to the zoo close to where she lived at the time, and one of the big attractions at that zoo was a huge giraffe exhibit. And this girl was so excited about the giraffes that all I could think of was, she's got to see Kaku. I've got to show her Kaku.
I love giraffes. They're so good. Their necks are so long and stupid.
High praise.
Yeah.
Speaking of cowardice, though, Mark, it seems like you're dodging.
No. Okay, so let me go on record first by saying that I agree with everything that you said about Usopp, and I will forever stand by the position that Usopp's character arc is the greatest character arc in any show I've ever seen, ever.
It really is.
That said,
same.
That said, my favorite Straw Hat is Nami. I don't feel like I can overstate how deep Arlong Park hit home. And while even now, later on in life, I think maybe I resonate a little bit harder with Vivi in Alabasta and the sort of things that she goes through. Arlong Park and what Nami does and what she goes through has never, ever stopped being meaningful to me in a really major way. And to see her development, to see that arc is just second to none for me. Plus, the greedy part of her does warm my little Slytherin heart. Can't deny that.
You hit the nail on the head.
They even went back and sort of HD'd it a little bit. They did an episode of, I forget what they called it, because I know there was an episode of East Blue, but I don't think that's what I'm referring to. I want to say they just did like an episode of Arlong Park, where they basically trimmed down Arlong Park into, I want to say, like an hour-long special. But, with the widescreen and the HDs and all of that. And it is just as gorgeous now as it was then. It means so much to me. But outside of the Straw Hats, I'm honestly really torn. This is where I'm going to have to...
Is it Perona or is it Vivi?
What about Tashigi?
Oh, you're right. Or Tashigi.
Shigi's real good.
Tashigi's very good, but they're all very good.
I think I'm going to have to...
You gotta choose between your children.
Okay. I'm going to go with, just by Dang it!
I'm gonna give you a hernia. I'm worried.
We're just destroying everything here in this.
I'm gonna say
podcast.
Tashigi, but I feel like I should have said Vivi, but I'm gonna say Tashigi. There's just something really endearing about Tashigi. This work hard, no nonsense, like by the book, but with these cute, quirky character traits that are just really endearing. But gosh, how can you not like Tashigi? She's just so good.
She's so good. Buddy cop between Tashigi and Smoker. When?
And unfortunately, I can't talk about my trash son just yet.
You can say who he is.
But listeners of Piece Together will know that my trash son was, and probably will forever be Don Quixote do Flamenco.
Garbage. I hate him.
I know.
Man, you all went deep into your favorite characters. I'm like, I like Robin. She's great. I love Law. He's amazing.
Mine are probably a little all over the place. So originally, for the crew, is it kind of like at the part where we're at for Impel Down, like Zora's always a huge favorite of mine, but I've really started to love Brooke just from like his backstory, and whenever they show like when he's singing Bink Sake, I think.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
And they're showing like him and his crew, like his original crew, and they're playing it and stuff. And I feel like just I love his character arc and his development of, yeah, he's kind of jokey and stuff, but I've just really, really loved his thing. And I've met the English voice actor, so I get like biased when I tend to meet the people that are like actually giving the voice to these things. I feel like probably I'm gonna go with Brooke overall. Non One Piece. I don't know if it's spoiling or not, but Marco, the Phoenix.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we'll just leave it at the name
We'll
for
leave it
now.
at the name.
We'll just say the name. Chris brought up villain, so I'm trying to think of a villain that early on that I was a huge fan of. I mean, honestly, it's probably earlier on. It's going to be Crocodile. I'll have a different one for part 2, but
it's hard to argue against Croc. He brings a certain style and flair and class to the proceedings.
Even though he's slimy and disgusting.
Yeah, Baroque Works was, I feel like a neat element of introducing like a deeper element to a Warlord of the Sea, because I feel like earlier on you just kind of hear like, oh, that's who these 6-7 people are, is they're these warlords, and that's really all you got. But with Crocodile, you actually, as you're watching it through Alabasta, like you start to once you connect all the dots, then you realize like there's a deeper element to this specific warlord, and I think it kind of brings you in a little bit.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because our very first exposure to warlords is actually Mihawk, way back when they're fighting Don Krieg. So like we get Mihawk and we see a little bit of what he's about, and like how he just sort of came back to follow them because he was bored. And then we see the vast difference between him and calculating has everything together Crocodile, and it's a very interesting juxtaposition to have those two be the first you meet, I think, actually.
So I'm going to ask this is a non-real world question, but we all watch anime, so you guys should be probably fairly used to this. So it brings up a good point. Like Mihawk very early is the first person to see who, obviously you find out, destroyed Don Krieg's crew because they just happened to sail near him. He was bored, and he just destroyed their entire armada, and just says, well, if you just didn't come across me that day, you guys would have been fine. You just happened to sail by me as I was on my way to do something else, and I can't let one ship escape. That's why he's going to destroy them. If you're kind of thinking in terms of like One Piece, how disheartening is that going to be that like you finally get to the Grand Line, that one dude's just like, I'm just gonna go ahead, and putting yourself in that mindset of you're trying to get to the Grand Line. Like, do you still go after what you just saw Mihawk do, or do you just kind of like not bother with it?
That I think depends on what it means to you, right? Like if it was Luffy's going to keep going. Luffy's not going to let a stop him. He has a goal, he has a dream, and it's everything. The journey is everything. But if you're someone like Don Krieg,
So I feel like
people wanted to go back, but
I feel like there's an interesting. So in One Piece, they talk about it, the 4 different seas. In the East Blue is considered by they bring it up as the weakest sea, which is I feel like I've always felt that's kind of interesting when you think of Shanks, Luffy, and Zoro and just a couple other people. How do you guys feel like the show's done at keeping each 4 part actually making each 4 parts separate in its own thing? Because obviously introducing people come from all over, but maybe it's forgotten about. I feel One Piece has done a good job of at least they bring it up periodically that people come from different places. So I kind of wanted to get your guys' thoughts on it. The One Piece anime, obviously as a world, is vast. How do you guys feel that they do furthering that world and not limiting it to just where the anime currently is at?
I think if you did a word cloud of everything we said on our podcast, world building is probably at the top of it. We're always gushing about it. We always love how this world goes well beyond the wants and needs of our main characters. If they were to vanish, the events would still go on without them. I dare say the show might still even be worth watching if all the Straw Hats disappeared. It's really compelling and interesting, and the way they traverse it and the way that everyone comes from different seas and there's different strengths and there's always another next step. It was all about the Grand Line, and now it's about to be all about the New World and all these 4 seas. There's always a bigger fish. It just really sets you up to you feel like you're exploring. You really get that gratification of uncovering new worlds and defeating a new type of foe.
Yeah, I think with the way that they work to set it up, I would dare say it's very deliberate. Drinking dog.
we knew it was coming. Once it's picked up on our mic too. So
quick clarification, so no one calls PETA. The dog is not drinking what they are drinking.
Look, I love my dog. I don't $30 tequila love my dog.
Miles always struck me as more of just a regular old ale guy,
I mean, we'll never know because the one place that used to have beer for dogs by us no longer has beer for dogs. It's a tragedy. Anywho,
that's a liability is what that was.
I'm pretty sure it was little things of gravy that they would give the dogs to drink with you.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanted to have a beer with my dog once, and I never got to.
I'm sorry.
And I'm still torn up about it. Anywho, as I was saying, I think the way he sets it up is very much by design, because when we start off and we're in the East Blue, everything feels so insular and so isolated, and all of these things from anywhere else are just so very exotic. And when you think about that and the bigger picture of how the world is actually laid out and how the geography works and the actual technical difficulties getting from one sea to another, that makes a lot of sense, which is why it doubly makes sense once you're finally in the Grand Line, which is the place where all of these seas inevitably converge. That's when you see, more diversity. This person from the North Blue, this person from the West Blue, and all of these things sort of mixing together, but also with the Grand Line still having its own unique identity. When we think about the fact that Chopper joined us from the Grand Line itself, Frankie came from the Grand Line itself. That's where he hails from. It has to be. I refuse to accept that it's not by design, and I think it's just really clever and really well done how that sort of goes from one to the other.
And we've also talked about this a little bit on our show as well, but how starting in the East Blue is a really good frame for the story, because we learn about this world along with them. And it's not to say that they're completely ignorant of the world they live in, but the more intricate parts of the world we're still learning as we go through, and so are they, because there's parts about the Grand Line that they don't know and we don't know. So it's a really good lens to view the story from.
As you find out more about the other seas, that I don't feel like starting off somewhere else I don't think it would have meant as much versus them starting off in the East Blue and Luffy starting the crew and really getting that early strength from the early enemies that he fought on the East Blue. I feel like if you go to other seas, you don't really get that. I don't think you get that character depth if you go to other places. Now that they've kind of described a little bit about what they are. And I know we're getting ready to wrap up part 1, so there's a couple key questions I want to make sure I cover that.
Quick hits. Let's do it. Quick hits. Boom.
So, based on the anime itself, I want to get everyone's quick opinion so far, favorite arcs so far. I think I already know everyone's answer because I think you've all said it.
For me, it's Water 7 Enies Lobby. Robin's my girl. She means a lot to me. That arc means a lot to me. We get some of the most amazing development from Usopp in that arc. It's just, it's the peak for me. It's amazing.
I think I said this on the most recent episode, but while that's probably close in the long run, that might be my answer. Just what Impel Down did, the fact that we have had a lot of shows bring back characters in a real fan servicey way, and that it happened this way because it makes sense. It's a high security prison with all of the bad guys that have been put away, and to have them all be a jailbreak and like that, and with no other Straw Hats other than Luffy to be seen, it was not what I expected a One Piece arc even could be, and I'm still kind of riding that high.
I don't think it stops.
No.
It's just gonna
it never stops.
It really doesn't.
In case anyone who hasn't watched One Piece yet was like, they surely must be exaggerating about you hit one arc and then there's no stopping. Like, no, you really are just.
And I think for myself, I'd have to stick with Alabasta. It always was good, but watching through with Chris and Dak, I just realized how much it resonates with me where I'm at in my life right now.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Impel Down as well, just because some of the different fights that they introduced in that arc were just so good. Okay, so we're gonna have another little fast fire question. So if you gotta pick one. You gotta pick one devil fruit to eat. What are you picking?
Oh.
Yeah,
that's a toughie.
Oh, that's real tough. Now I gotta go through the list, the mental Rolodex of.
So for me, it's the Mirror Mirror no Mi Aces fruit. Like that's my hands down what I'm going with.
It's a solid choice for just a lot of reasons. It's tough to compete with that. I'm almost tempted to say, oh God, I'm blanking on the name. Half of me wants to say Smoker's Fruit, and half of me wants to say, I feel like we had a version of this discussion way back when, before, like when we had 10% of the fruits that we've seen up in the show until now. I feel like I made a good argument for Buggy, but it was just really laziness based. Like I never have to get up to go to the fridge again.
I'm pretty sure it was that, actually.
All the beers can come to me.
Exactly.
See, that was me with Law's fruit.
Mm.
If I can just make the room big enough, everything can come to me.
You have to get some good control because you run the risk of just teleporting the fridge to your face.
Exactly. So, like, I love Lost Fruit. I don't think I'd personally want it because I don't have the correct knowledge to make the best use of that fruit. I have always really liked Robin fruit, so it's really a tie for me between Robin and actually Aokiji. So
What do you got, Dak?
A brain full of memories that probably have One Piece devil fruits in them somewhere, but they're all disheveled like a random file cabinet.
We can assign Dak a fruit.
Oh no, I don't.
I like that. Let's see.
You're gonna give me choppers because you're jerks.
the human fruit.
We're not going to give you choppers anymore.
Just become different versions of Dak. I can transform into work Dak. I can transform into after work Dak.
What's Bon Clay's fruit? That seems like it would be.
That's what the copy.
Yeah.
I forget the Japanese name. I think it's translated as copy.
Yeah, it was a parlor trick. I mean, like D&D is never going to be the same. Like, oh my god, he's doing a perfect Clooney. Did he touch George Clooney's face at some point, or just someone with a good Clooney impression? I'm concerned.
Yeah, I feel like what would a comparable spell be in D? Disguise self?
Yeah, but ninth level
disguise self.
Yeah, the ultimate level disguise self.
Because that would allow you to change your shape, your height, your voice.
I guess it'd be a combination of disguise self and polymorph in some way.
Yeah,
probably actually. Now I want to make it.
That'd actually be a really cool spell.
Excuse me, I need to write a note to myself.
Don't worry, I'll send you that little part out. I'm gonna listen to that back and be like, "That's a good idea." I'm gonna go ahead and.
It's gonna be a race to see who makes it first.
We'll just make sure that we each publish the next session at the exact same time and see who brings it up first. Just completely unrelated. Like last time on, I have a new spell.
It's like, where did you learn it? Don't worry about it.
I have a new spell. Just shut up. So, okay, this is gonna be a quick side tangent, but I feel like it's a good point. With different types of D&D existing now, for example, I'm a friend of mine. I'm joining a campaign where it's based on Zelda lore and Zelda, and I'm going to be playing a Rito fighter. Do you got I don't know if you're currently doing this, so you might already have the answer, but translating the world of actual fruits into a D&D game, how well do you think that could work, or do you think there's that
could work super well?
I've had this discussion before where D&D is the mainstream one and it could be done, but there's this other system we've used called Wild Talents that just gives you a ton of leeway with making superpowers that would probably be much better for all, because sometimes Oda gets creative with them in ways that don't neatly slot into D&D traits.
Yeah, Wild Talents is it's a lot of crunch at first, but once you learn the crunch, it's very satisfying to sit there and just make crazy powers.
And the crunch goes away. It's not like Shadowrun where it's permanently crunchy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's an older system. I don't know that it would be super easy to find a hardcover book. I think the PDF is still available online for purchase and stuff like that. If somebody wanted to run a One Piece based game and have it most true to life, I think that would be the way to go.
Yeah.
But like Dak said, I think 5e you could make it work. And we've seen people do their own sort of homebrew things online. We've toyed with the idea of experimenting with trying out running, maybe doing a session for us, but our plates are so full.
Yeah, but I definitely think it could work. I mean, I run a Persona-based game in 5e that works really well. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of there's room for that.
Yeah, I feel like it depends on how much work you're willing to put into changing homebrew into okay, well, if you're gonna, for example, if you use a specific fruit, do you cap it at spell slots, or do you cap it at uses per day, or I feel like it just depends on how much work you're willing to put into it. But I think 5e is probably the best version where you're really going to be able to do it and still kind of
definitely it's definitely the most accessible version.
Oh yeah, no, I would definitely agree. And I've mentioned it in a past episode, but there's a couple different D&D tools I use myself. Griffin's Monster Maker is a pretty cool tool for combat creation and kind of making your own stat blocks and characters and everything. It's really simplified, and you can export PDF versions. So I use that for creating my own monsters. So for all you DMs out there that are kind of using Roll20 right now, Griffin's Monster Maker, it's really the quick, easy, free way of getting some cool, unique monsters that you can kind of create on your own, and it puts it in a nice little PDF for you.
I'm bookmarking that right now.
Well, thank you for that information.
It's
three other GMs in this call immediately write it down.
Yep.
Yeah. Quick second. Just stop recording for one quick second. I'm sorry. What was the website? Okay. Okay. Perfect. Okay. There's another one I use. It's if you guys give me 1 second, I'll let everyone know. It's Kobold. I think it's something Kobold. I'm blanking on the actual thing. I can send it to you guys. Kobold's Fight Club. That's another one. That's I use Kobold's Fight Club when I'm doing combat creation because it doesn't have everyone. So if you have a different book, or if you have a Ghost of Saltmarsh or a book like that, you're not gonna find those monsters in there, but it has the majority of monsters from Player's Handbook and Monster Manual, and you can go in there and put what all your players' levels are, and then you go in and put different monsters, and it tells you like this is considered a medium combat or a hard combat or a deadly combat, and then it calculates the experience with the multiplier based on party members and everything. So it really helps simplify combat creation.
Dang, all right.
That's real nice.
So
Marking things left and right here.
Yep.
one thing, in Dak, before we have to let you jump off for part one, I always ask all of my guests, if you're thinking from the standpoint of, there's a lot of people out there, they're thinking of getting into podcasting, worried about multiple guests, and you guys kind of have the kind of a good situation in terms of for this question, because you have been doing a podcast for multiple years and you have multiple guests and people that live apart. For other podcasters out there that are in that kind of similar situation, what like tools and advice would you give to other people?
I would say, be consistent. One thing blessing that One Piece is, as long as it is that if we have a day where we're not firing on all cylinders, it's not like, we're doing something like You Talking You Two to Me, where it's like there's only like 10 albums, so that 10% of our podcast is crap because we had a crap episode now. Right. It's I don't know. I don't know if there's much we have in the way of tools. I guess all I can really offer is the approach of just talking with people who have been some of the easiest conversations I've had in my life. It makes it real easy to just meet up every week and have one in front of a microphone and make it a recurring thing.
Yeah, and by tools, I guess, so like I had mentioned it previously, but I'm currently using SoundCloud, which has been terrible. Sorry, SoundCloud, if you somehow listen to this. So I'm looking into switching, but there's a lot of different things out there. I'm thinking of Buzz right now. I know you guys are on Libsyn. Like, how's that working for you guys for podcasting? How's that as a podcasting host?
Between the two big ones that I know of are Libsyn and I like Burberry or Blueberry, something like that. There's a berry involved. They still send me emails, so I guess I could look it up. But anywho, I feel like if it's something that you really want to do long term, the first thing I would say is definitely figure out how often you want to release. Like, do an episode, see how big it is, and then like buy your space accordingly. I definitely pay for way more space than we need for our podcast, but I like having that security of if we go long, it's not a big deal. We don't have to freak out too much about this and that. And I think just knowing that even if something were to happen, there's no danger of the podcast just being lost into the aether because it's, being hosted on a site that archives and stores all of that stuff. It really puts me at ease that way, at least from that perspective. I can say I've been really happy with Libsyn. I'm the one who normally handles the website aspect of it. Uploading things is really, really simple. The interface is really good at tracking, how many people listened, where did people listen from. I remember in the first year of the podcast, I'd go on there just to be like, oh my God, someone listened in Sweden. Oh my God, someone listened in Spain. I think the coolest one, I think we have Zimbabwe now.
Yeah,
I think we've breached into Zimbabwe.
Zimbabwe. That's a far breach.
I mean, 1 download in Zimbabwe is more than 0 downloads in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
And it's more downloads than I ever thought I'd get in Zimbabwe. But definitely, I think it's worth it to pay for hosting. I think definitely I know we talked a little bit about your way of recording versus ours, but the bottom line is make sure everybody's being recorded on their own channel. It makes editing take slightly longer, but it also just makes everything sound so much cleaner.
Yes.
But on that note, you also need to out the gate accept that you will never be 100% satisfied with any episode you release ever.
Yep.
And if you let yourself get bogged down in trying to make it perfect, you will never release anything. That is something I had to learn very, very quickly when we put out our first few episodes. And I'll be honest, like the first couple episodes before Chris took over as editor, before we figured out our recording setup, they're rough. They're not great to go back and listen to. We didn't know the cleanest ways to record, but as a creator of a podcast, if you don't make yourself just do it and get it out there, you never will.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. And I feel like for me, like I podcasted before with a different group, and now getting back into it, I feel like every episode I'm trying to make some sort of improvement, like looking at better equipment, due to the situation where like I do tend to have like some noise, and right now it's unavoidable. So I try to take different precautions on making sure. And like, so for learning audio editing for me early on, the key focus was learning all the tricks in the effects in Audacity for now, before I moved to Adobe Audition, of how to get rid of background noise and side noise. And like, so I spent a large part of time just drilling on how to do those type of effects. So even though there might have been a motorcycle that drove by, or my 2-year-old ran into the room, when the episode airs, you don't hear any of that. Go into it knowing what you might have to deal with, and as you're churning out episodes, work on that as you're producing content.
One thing that was a really big comfort to me, one of the biggest podcasts I listen to, there's a couple of the McElroy podcasts, but my brother and me specifically, knowing what their first episodes sounded like versus what their episodes now sounded like, and just seeing that, hey, you're allowed to progress as you're doing it. No one expects you to be perfect from the word go. It's okay to learn and grow, and you can still, while you're learning and growing as a creator, grow your channel. Like it was really inspiring for me personally.
Well, there you go. I you know what? After we're done, if you don't mind, if you could send me the link to one of those podcasts as well, I feel like my listeners could get a pretty good. Seems like that'd be pretty informational for everyone that doesn't know about that, to get a chance to kind of hear that kind of message.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
Awesome. And I feel like we got a good kind of part one here for everyone out there. So if you for all of you listening, we had said it previously, but we are going to be doing a 2-part podcast here. We're going to kind of go into some of the other aspects of some of the movies and some of the stuff that's farther along in the One Piece anime in part 2, so we don't spoil everything for Dak and ruin hundreds and hundreds of episode involvement. Knowing One Piece, I definitely would not want to do that, so I don't want to make sure we try to avoid any spoilers as possible. So really appreciate again all 3 of you on part. This was awesome. It was really fun to kind of get this part done. Of course, everyone out there, you can listen to the Piece Together podcast at Piece Together, and that's .libsyn.com. And then you guys also have the Twitter, of course. Like I had mentioned, all the links will be posted, and you guys
can also find us on Apple Podcasts, on Google Play, pretty much anywhere where you can download a podcast.
Spotify as well.
So download it now, and then when you tell me you download it, I will go ahead and I will pass the message along. So make sure you guys, when you download it, let me know, so I can pass along some message and get some brownie points. The more brownie points I can stack up from everywhere, I got to figure out some way to cash those in.
Bonus, yeah.
I assumed for literal brownies, Chris is a pretty mean baker.
I do make some
then literal brownies will do the trick. Yes. Mixed. I would say don't mix them with the tequila if you could. I'm not really too sure how that would go, but. As promised, guys, you made it to the end of part 1. So you guys get your fandom tip of the episode, and it's going to be a pretty cool one. It's going to be an application for Android, and it should be on Apple devices as well, called Qoo App. So that's QOOAPP, and that is an app you can download for free that will let you download the Japanese versions of popular mobile games. So I mentioned it in a previous podcast about the English version of One Piece Treasure Cruise. This will let you download the Japanese version, or DBZ Dokkan Battle, or just so many other games. If you guys see or hear your friends playing these crazy Japanese games, and it's in Japanese, and you're wondering, well, how they download that? Like, well, you can crack your phone and do stuff like that, or you can download this app for free, download the game free through there, and then you guys can play all these pretty cool games, 100% free. So I highly encourage you guys to download that. And the app itself does not take up much space, so just pay attention to what game you're downloading in terms of space. But again, appreciate everyone tuning in to part 1. Of course, you can find the Fandom Effect on our Facebook page, the YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and we will be transitioning from SoundCloud very shortly. But as of right now, you can still find us on SoundCloud as well. As a precaution, we're going to be probably switching to Buzzsprout. So if you are hearing this and SoundCloud is down, go to Buzzsprout. You guys will be able to listen to us there. So end of part 1. Any final words, Dak, you want to pass along here?
No, thanks for having me. This is a blast. I love talking about One Piece, but now I'll get out of your hair so you can talk all about how, like, Chopper is Zoro's father and all that fun stuff that you'll learn.
There will be an in-depth discussion about what every transformation of Chopper would translate to in Dak form. So...
Well, not bad for one playthrough. You have multiple achievements left to unlock. Please follow the Fandom Effect podcast on all available platforms and unlock the next level. If that doesn't work, just turn it on and off.